probably weren't expecting me right away, but here I am. I'm Christian Majgaard. I spent 25 years of my life with Lego. My background is in product, marketing, and branding. And it's like a customer journey. It takes a long time before you have the right result, but then they're there. Shortly, you'll hear about CX maturity, but before that, I'm going to take 10 minutes of your time and I shall speak about Lego's success story in particular, what was the reason for this great success? That is, of course, hard to be an expert on, but I have 4 or 5 principles that I think were crucial for Lego's success. The first thing I believe was and is a very important principle at Lego is customer respect. Many companies use the word target group about their customers. I really don't like that because it appears as if these were something you wanted to shoot down, or they're victims for your dreams and not a partner. At Lego, the view is and was that the customer is a partner that we should respect. And this was and is not strategy. It has to do with respect for children in a moral way. The family often says it's a moral obligation to give children the best because they are our future. And so that is a fantastic background for a young marketing person to have worked with Lego. I'm not young anymore, but I was young when I started. The second success criteria I want to speak about is customer insight. Many companies make, of course, market research, but we often see that they work with very pressed budgets, and it's not really used to the extent it should. Not so at Lego. I wouldn't say we were swimming in money, but Lego has always done a lot to understand its customer. Not only because they respected it, but of course also because they didn't want to launch products that wouldn't be met with the right appeal with the customers. Whenever Lego had important meetings, important decisions to take, you could be damn sure there would always be market researchers around. When I came straight from university to Lego, my first task was to work with market research. And it really helped me to get to know all managers in the global organization, because whenever there were meetings, they always called for someone to come and speak about what we knew about the customer. This was because understanding the customer was and is not only about what marketing is supposed to do, it's also about technical departments or packaging department. A department doing packaging at Lego knows very well that one of the most important things to the child is that there are no missing parts. And it's not marketing that ensures that there are no missing parts. It's the people on the packing line. Another principle that means a lot to Lego's success is that it is brand-driven. Many companies have management meetings where the reports are about sales and profit, cash flow, equity, and what have you. And quite often, if you look at the minutes of meetings for a whole year in a board meeting, you hardly see any market research. You hardly see any stories about the brand. At Lego, this was quite reversed. The brand was there every time there were meetings in one way or the other. So Lego did not have this selling in focus, the easy sale. Of course, they respected that people also try to reach these very short-term practical objectives, but it was always about to provide customer experiences that are so appealing that they recruit more customers and enhance their loyalty towards the brand year after year, generation after generation. I guess that with that activity Lego had and has on these parameters, Lego would score pretty high on Zendesk CX maturity index. I also believe that it means a lot to Lego's success that it is such an innovation-driven and innovation-friendly company. It's throughout the entire history of Lego, we see disruptions that turned into innovations. It comes, mind you, Lego used to be a carpenter company, and then they turned into wooden toys, then they turned into plastic bricks, and so on and so on. The disruptions and innovation I shall talk a little bit about, which I believe mean a lot to where Lego is today. Lego in the 90s were challenged by Hollywood's movie characters because it changed the business model by one of our competitors. Hasbro started licensing these characters, and it was very successful. And our brand began looking a little bit dull and so. Then the computers came into the homes. They were in industry, they were in schools, but they were not really in homes until the early 90s. And thirdly, the retail structure changed. Originally, toys were very much sold by our little mom and pop corner shops, but they died away, and we got big supermarkets. And one of them was a focused supermarket named Toys R Us. And of course, they were an important partner because they grew and grew all over the world, and they only sold toys. So fantastic for Lego, but also scary because soon they made up 30%, almost 30% of Lego sales. We really agreed we should do something, and we started all this reaction, this innovation with a whole new brand vision. We agreed that we wanted to be the world's strongest brand among families with children. I happen to be managing business innovation and branding in those years, so a lot of these new tasks landed on my shoulders. So in the following years, we launched an international theme park concept called Legoland. We launched robotics, so we got this computer link that we really wanted. We made brand alliances with Hollywood. How, or rather, why could we do these innovations pretty rapidly and without too many problems? Let me give you some examples or reasons for that. One was we were really disrupted. So when a company is disrupted, it's not only the marketing guys who are worried, the whole company is worried. So they're more open to new ideas. We also had this lovely tradition for research. It is so that when companies are in doubt, all kinds of easy opinions flourish the management floor. And it is so helping if you have a strong customer insight structure, that you have good facts, comparable facts to work with. And we really had that. It also helped us that we hired experts whenever we entered a new category. We did not only rely on me and my toy friends, my toy colleagues. So for instance, that when we entered the robotics category, we made a cooperation with MIT, Boston, the Technical University, and because we knew they were working with robots and children, so it was very natural to link up with them. And that also was typical for the other categories we entered. We always brought people in from that category, never only relied on our own, should I say, toys knowledge. I've been speaking a lot about the successes, so I feel it's only timely and relevant to speak about failure. I have been deeply involved in a customer service failure. When we trial launched children's software, we went into the children's software category in the late 90s. We were a little bit worried about the category. We knew we could add value because we had been experimenting, and we could see if we moved software strategy a little bit away from the one finger click, shoot them down software to something more open and problem solving, creative, we could really add value to the category. And so we did. We did it together with a partner because we were not software developers, we were not software distributors. We did it with a partner. When we launched, we did the mistake that we launched globally. So we could not really, we had not done enough to estimate what volumes, what penetration will we reach. And we were very successful, and we were celebrated as the best children's software in the year we launched. And this challenged our help desk, and that caused a lot of problems with these families with children. And they called into our help desk, and you could hear the child crying, and you could hear the voice of an angry or confused father or mother. And sadly, we did not at all have the capacity to cope. So we had far too few people on our help desk. And of course, we increased the capacity right away. It was not about waiting until next year's budget. We were so sorry about it. It was tough stuff right away on our top management meeting as soon as it happened, and everybody agreed, fix it as fast as we can. We will not see a dissatisfied customer. But when it was on, it was quite an experience. It was something we learned from. What we should have done. I've almost said that we should have launched in the corner of our market and then better learned what is it really we are entering here. Then we could have adapted. Then we would have known you don't need 30 people on your help desk. You need 300 people on your help desk. So here in the end of my 10 minutes, let me just repeat the few imperatives that I think were quite important to Legos success. Customer respect, the moral obligation, customer insight, which was a passion for the entire organization, brand driven, there's a whole idea of building loyalty for tomorrow through a great and appealing customer experience, innovation friendly, which had many facets of how we work together, how we work with other people, and finally, how we embrace experimentation rather than just saying no or saying yes, make a big business plan. Let's experiment for a while. Very important stuff, including the zero fear of failure. Thank you. And now on to the show.
Hi there, it's Sarah Reed from Zendesk. Sorry I wasn't there to greet you earlier, but we figured you'd enjoy hearing about Christian and his time at Lego. He has some great insights on why innovation comes from disruption. But now, as Christian says, it's on to the show. Welcome to CX Discoveries, Decoding Customer Service. You're here today for one very simple reason. You want to deliver great customer service. And we at Zendesk have absolute faith that you can do that. What we've learned with working with over 160,000 customers across the globe is that customer experience, well, it's a journey. No one gets CX right out of the gate, but with each and every incremental action you take, you get better and sharper at meeting customers where they are, responding to their problems, and reacting to their feedback. Customer service is the beating heart of any organization. You are the ones who most directly interact with customers. You're the ones who hear about what they love and what they hate. And you're the ones who ultimately shape how they feel about your company. That's a big responsibility. And to do it well, you need staff, tools, and a seat at the decision-making table. So how do you get all that? Well, you have to communicate across your company about why investing in CX matters. Because as you already know, once you've mastered customer service, you'll positively impact every other business goal your company has. Today's session will help you decode how to do all of that. It's about giving you an honest assessment of where you and your organization is on this journey to CX maturity. It's about showing you clear next steps. Oh, and as you'll find today, this research includes respondents from across the Asia-Pacific region, Japan, Korea, India, Singapore, and Australia. Your peers have provided you the data and the language to show your executives that what you do is so absolutely vital and so worth the investment. We're on a collective journey here, and the first step is figuring out how you're doing right now, this very moment. And so we've got a short interactive quiz that will show you not just how you stack up to your peers when it comes to CX, but more importantly, the steps to take to make those big leaps forward. Before we take the quiz though, I want to introduce you to our friends at Enterprise Strategy Group, or ESG, because you know us customer service folk love a good acronym. This is the second year that we've teamed up with ESG to explore CX maturity. And this year, we're giving you very tangible data on what it means for you. Hey, John and Adam.
Hey, Sarah, great to be here with you.
Can you break it down for us? What exactly is CX maturity?
Very simply, CX maturity is an assessment we've developed to measure the number of best practices in place at an organization. And these are the best practices that we think are most important to ensuring that your customers have a positive experience when dealing with your brand. Our research has a special focus on customer service and support and those related best practices.
And are you giving people a grade or some sort of score?
No, we don't really like to do that because it sort of makes CX maturity feel like a one-time thing, something you maybe accomplish and then move on from. And as you've said, CX innovation is a continuous process. You always have to be evolving and innovating what you do, because the moment you start to stagnate, today's savvy customers are going to start looking to your competitors who might be doing a better job. So at the end of the day, there's always room to build and improve. So for that reason, we've taken the tack of putting organizations into broad categories rather than having a static score. And for the purposes of this video, we're going to look at 3 core tiers of organizations. Our first are our CX starters. These are the organizations that are really just getting started on that CX journey. They may have a couple of best practices in place, but they've got some significant gaps in their capabilities. And what's important to note about this group is that even though they're the least mature type of organization today, they make up the biggest segment of the market. So it's very common for an organization to be a CX starter today. The next tier of organization are our CX risers and emerging organizations. These organizations have several best practices in place, but they still have some gaps in terms of their capabilities. But they have an eye towards adopting more. And the other thing that's important to note here is that this is the second biggest segment of the market. Now, our third tier of organization is our pretty exclusive club of CX champions. These are the organizations that are really just killing it in terms of CX, and they've adopted all 7 best practices that we look at. Now, these organizations are in a great place today. They are outperforming their competitors, but they're going to need to continue to push and strive to evolve as the market continues to change.
Is your organization a CX starter, a CX emerger, riser, or a CX champion? Well, it's time to find out. To get to the quiz, head on over to the link on screen or in the console. And remember, there are no wrong answers, as all of us are on this CX maturity journey together, just not on the same path or at the same time. I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back. I hope the quiz made you think and maybe illuminated just a little bit about where you and your organization are on this CX journey. In a bit, we'll dive deeper into your specific place along the road. But first, let's look at the bigger picture and why CX investments are so very important. As I mentioned, we've partnered again with ESG to surface those CX insights that hide in plain sight. Here are their CX discoveries for 2021.
So before we get into the data itself, let's back up a little bit and talk about why even do this kind of study. Why does CX and CX maturity matter?
Yeah, well, it's a simple answer, right? Because CX, improving CX, increases customer outcomes and business performance. For example, in last year's research, we saw that higher maturity organizations were able to resolve customers' issues 34% faster. And they were 9 times more likely to say that their customers have increased their spending with them. So, as organizations get better at servicing their customers, what we're seeing is those customers are rewarding those companies with more loyalty, better word of mouth, increased wallet share. So there's a lot to gain here by improving CX maturity, and to do that you have to understand where you are today. Now, this concept of linking CX capabilities to business outcomes it's not necessarily groundbreaking, but what makes our research interesting and noteworthy is that we're actually able to quantify and measure how much improving your CX maturity actually impacts some of these customer and business outcomes. Right. And what we see is, CX maturity really it's mission critical, and our respondents agree. In Asia, 88% of respondents agreed that if they do not continuously improve CX capabilities, they risk losing business to more customer-centric competitors. And this is pretty consistent globally. So if your organization is multinational today, or maybe it has aspirations to be tomorrow, it's important to realize that CX matters no matter where your customers live.
So these are really high stakes then for businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've introduced the concept of CX maturity. Can you talk a little bit about how you went about measuring CX maturity in the context of this study?
It's a great question. And when we think about CX maturity, we look at a collection of 7 individual best practices. Our point of view on CX is that it's a holistic set of capabilities. It has to encompass your people, your process, your technology, and increasingly your data. And that if you have weaknesses in any part of this CX practice area, it's going to hold your organization back in terms of how it services its customers.
Well, people, process, and technology is a classic way of looking at any kind of issue, and there's a reason why it stood the test of time. So let's take each of those one at a time. Let's talk about people and organizations first. What did you focus on there?
Yeah, when we think about people, we really look at 2 things. First, does your organization have enough people to meet customer demands? And second, are they skilled up enough to really effectively resolve customer issues?
Of course, so we have to take care of our people and everything that entails. Let's move on to process. What did you look at in terms of CX processes?
Yeah, when it comes to processes, what we're really talking about here is the service organization's ability to be a change agent for the organization at whole, right? So the service organization captures a lot of data about what customers want, what they care about. And what we want to know is the organization effective at interpreting that data and using it to actually evolve what the business does? And the second piece is, even if your service organization can do that, can it do it quickly? Because that agility piece really matters here too.
You mentioned data, and that brings us to the technology piece of the equation. So what can you tell us about data and technology and how that factors into CX maturity?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's really hard to improve anything you can't measure.
Sure.
And our data practices try to account for that, right? So we look at, does the organization have all of the service data it needs, all the KPIs it needs to run that part of the business? And the second piece is, we look at that data specifically. Is it real time? Is it current? Or is the organization making decisions and evolving processes based on old data, which is not something we want?
Right.
Now, on the technology angle, what we're really focused there on is the agent experience. We want to see that organizations are giving their people the tools and technologies they need to do their jobs well. Because at the end of the day, if the organization doesn't provide quality tools to the agent, doesn't matter how empathetic or passionate they are about supporting your customers, they're going to fall short of customers' expectations.
We have people, process, and technology considerations, and then a variety of best practices that roll up under those categories. Can you talk a little bit about how you actually measured where organizations are in each of those dimensions?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the survey, based on what a respondent tells us about their organization, we're actually able to count how many of these best practices does the organization have in place. Is it 0, 1, 2, maybe 7? And based on that calculation, we place organizations into one of 4 cohorts. For the purposes of the video, we're talking about 3. So at the bottom of the pile, we have our CX starters. At a maximum, they have 3 of these best practices in place. Our risers and emerging organizations have somewhere between 4 and 6. And our champions have actually leveled up all 7 and have adopted all 7 best practices.
So it's really a pretty high bar to reach that CX champion level. And in last year's research, there was a relatively small percentage of organizations that had achieved that. What does this year's study reveal?
That's right. In Asia, last year, only 6% of organizations had reached champion status. Fast forward to today, and that number has increased to 10%. So that's a 67% increase year over year, which is pretty impressive.
So those are really impressive and encouraging results. And it's great to see that collectively, just over the course of a year, organizations are stepping up and really improving their CX maturity levels and capabilities. Can you talk a little bit about how they're actually doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. The research showed us that there are really 3 areas where organizations are improving that's helping them move up the maturity curve. The first of those areas is that they're engaging customers in more and more channels over time, meeting their customers where they are. In Asia, the average organization today is engaging customers across 7.1 channels. Now that spans things like email, phone, chat, things like that. Now what's interesting is that that's up from just over 6 channels a year ago. So the average organization has added a whole channel in the last year. What this implies to me is that organizations are getting much better at finding where their customers want to engage them and opening up those channels. What we saw in the research is that more organizations are using chatbots, they're using in-app engagements, they're going to where their customers are and engaging them how their customers want to be engaged with.
So it's great to see that businesses of all types are really increasing their number of channels that they're using to connect with customers and reaching those customers wherever they may be. What other best practices did you see starting to take hold inside businesses around the world?
Yeah, and another thing that's really clear in the data is that organizations are getting better at building high-fidelity customer profiles. They're improving their ability to paint 360-degree views of their customer by bringing in all the past interactions that they've had with that customer, as well as layering in other data sources. In Asia, 37% of organizations say they can view their customer profiles as a single source of truth, that their agents have all the data they need all in one place. And that's up from 26% a year ago, so a pretty sizable jump. But it is worth noting that the Asian market does appear to be a little bit behind the North American and Latin American markets in this regard. The third area where organizations are improving is that organizations are much more likely this year than last to say that they hold their service teams in high regard. And that's great news for all of us. In Asia, 42% of organizations told us that they view their service team as a competitive differentiator, which is up from 29% in 2020.
Well, that's great to see that customer service teams are really getting their due, and I'm sure that will be wonderful news for everyone watching this video.
Yeah, I really think it's a big bellwether for not only what is happening today at organizations and what they're navigating, but for what's to come.
So it's really great to have that year-over-year perspective and see that organizations are hitting the accelerator on their CX initiative. So that's very encouraging. But let's talk a little bit about the champions specifically, these best-in-class organizations. What have we learned about them and what they've been doing in the past year?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot, and not to be cliche about unprecedented times, but organizations have had to be flexible and agile over the last year, 2 years, both in terms of how they service their customers, but also how they manage their workforces. And the data shows us that champions are just much more agile than their less mature counterparts. For example, we asked respondents, hey, if your organization had to radically rethink its support processes overnight because of some unforeseen issue or market force that you couldn't predict, how long would that take? And what we see is the gap between organizations is pretty wide. Champions in Asia estimated that it would take them about half as much time as starters to adapt to those changes and return to a normal level of operations. So to me, what this means is that any organization that's forward-thinking, right? They're thinking about the next big shift. They should really take this data to heart because what it shows us is that becoming a CX champion allows you to be much more agile and responsive to what the market needs.
So that covers internal agility. What about agility when it comes to servicing customers?
Yeah, well, it's really a pretty similar story. Champions are just much more agile, whether it's responding to customers faster or getting them to a solve faster. Champions in Asia resolve customers' issues 60% faster than starters, and their average first response time, their responsiveness to customers, is 33% faster than starters. So really, any way you measure agility, internal agility, external agility, champions are just much faster and much better able to adapt and respond to what the market needs.
Yeah, it really is just such a key part of being a real CX champion. So here's the million-dollar question, Adam. Maybe the billion-dollar question, depending on your industry and your company size. How are these CX champions faring when it comes to their business metrics?
Yeah, I mean, at the business level, it all boils down to this idea that champions are just far outperforming their less mature counterparts. And we captured really kind of an eye-popping array of data points that allow us to actually measure how much better they're doing. In Asia, champions are almost 25 times more likely to tell us that they typically exceed their customer satisfaction goals.
So Adam, I think it's really important to point out, you're not saying that champions are 1, 2, 3, or even 5 times more likely to achieve their customer satisfaction goals. You're giving really, really big numbers here. So these champion level organizations have really achieved a step function in business improvement relative to their peers.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And what we see in the data is that champions, by delighting their customers, they're actually rapidly expanding their customer bases. And we think that's through positive word of mouth. In Asia, champions were 5.4x more likely to tell us that they've grown their customer base over the last 6 months relative to starters. And we also found that champions' market-leading satisfaction is helping them drive increased levels of spending within their customer base. Champions in Asia were 18 times more likely to tell us that they've significantly increased customer spending over time.
Well, I can't imagine there is anyone watching this video that's not interested in increasing their average spend per customer. So if that's not an incentive enough to go down the path towards being a CX champion, I don't know what is.
Absolutely.
So Adam, once again, this is just really fascinating data. Is there anything else about this year's installment that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the thing that really is most notable to me is that all organizations across all the maturity levels, they all seem to be really prioritizing CX improvement in a multitude of ways. And I think the clearest way we see that in the data is through their increased investment levels. Mm-hmm. So what we asked respondents was, think of your current fiscal year. What % of your tech budget goes towards CX projects? And then we asked them, next fiscal year, what % of your technology budget will go towards CX? And what we see is a rapid increase across the board, all regions, all maturity levels. In total, in Asia, respondents told us that they expect a 31% uptick in their year-over-year CX spending. This shows me that organizational engagement on CX it's trending up. And that gets me excited about the future, because after all, this is a collective journey that we're all on together. And what I think we'll see as organizations accelerate their CX projects and they carve out bigger budgets to make those projects successful, ultimately, the customer will be the beneficiary. What they're going to see is waves of innovation as we go forward into the future.
안녕하세요, CX 스타터 여러분. CX 여정에 오신 것을 환영합니다. CX 챔피언이라는 산을 오르기 위해서는 우선 시작하는 게 중요하죠. 여러분은 글로벌 기업, 서비스 제공업체, 중소기업, 비영리 단체 등 다양한 인더스트리와 규모의 조직에서 오셨을 텐데요. 이 세션을 통해 유용한 인사이트를 얻으실 수 있을 것입니다. 먼저 에크미라는 가상의 회사를 소개하겠습니다. 자전거, 금속 제품 등 다양한 제품을 만드는 기업입니다. 에크미의 직원 수는 대략 300명이며 고객 서비스 팀은 작지만 강합니다. 에크미도 CX 스타터였습니다. 고객 경험을 위한 7가지 베스트 프랙티스 중 한 가지, 정확히는 1.5개를 가지고 있었죠. 하지만 에크미는 7가지 베스트 프랙티스를 모두 구현하여 CX 챔피언이 되고자 합니다. 전 세계의 고객에게 더 나은 서비스를 제공하고 과감히 미래로 나아가기 위해서이기도 합니다. CX 챔피언은 고객 최초 응대 시간을 43%까지 단축하고 고객 문제를 53% 단축된 시간 안에 해결합니다. 상담원 생산성도 72% 향상시키며 고객 서비스 팀의 미해결 티켓 수도 훨씬 적습니다. 그러나 에크미의 최초 응대 시간은 이에 미치지 못하는 3시간 3분입니다. 평균 처리 시간은 7시간 이상이며 평균 상담원은 월 36건의 티켓만 처리합니다. 놀랍게도 거의 5%의 티켓이 미처리 상태로 남습니다. 팀원들은 과도한 업무량에 힘들어하고 이러한 상황에 불만족한 고객들은 고객 서비스가 더 좋은 회사로 이동하게 됩니다. 에크미의 고객 서비스 책임자인 애니는 어디서부터 해결해야 할지 고민하던 중 상황이 복잡하다는 것을 깨달았습니다. 회사에서 배정받은 3명의 상담원으로 어떻게 업무량을 감당할 수 있을지, 어떻게 하면 적은 예산으로 상담원에게 더 좋은 기술을 제공할 수 있을지 고민이었습니다. 숫자를 계산하고 여러 시나리오를 구상한 후 애니와 팀은 한 가지 계획을 세웠습니다. 이 전략이 여러분의 여정을 위한 참고 사례가 될 수 있기를 바랍니다. 첫 번째 목표는 비즈니스 성과 개선입니다. 이를 위한 첫 번째 단계는 명확한 목표를 설정하는 것입니다. 애니는 CX를 향한 첫 번째 단계가 회사 전체의 비즈니스 전략에 따라 명확한 목표를 세워야 한다는 것을 인식했습니다. 달성하기는 어려워도 노력할 가치가 있는 목표입니다. 고객 만족도 향상, 고객 유지, 입소문을 통한 신규 고객 확보, 이 3가지 모두 에크미의 CX 매니저에게 중요하며 이 모든 사항이 고객 서비스 팀이 수익을 창출하는 팀이라는 것을 증명합니다. 두 번째 단계는 우선순위 KPI를 파악하는 것입니다. 애니는 곧 목표만으로는 충분하지 않다는 것을 알게 되었습니다. 팀의 상황을 측정하고 개선하기 위한 기준을 세워야 했습니다. 기준을 무리하게 세울 필요는 없으며 고객 설문조사와 고객 만족도 측정부터 시작합니다. 고객이 만족이나 불만족을 클릭하기만 하면 점수가 매겨지며 설문조사 도구를 연동하면 특정 상호작용과의 연관성을 쉽게 파악할 수 있습니다. 이후에는 NPS와 고객 유지 등 다른 목표와 관련된 질문을 추가합니다. 연구에 따르면 유지율이 5%만 증대되어도 수익이 기하급수적으로 증가할 수 있습니다. 애니는 이 지표를 통해 팀이 어떻게 에크미를 발전시키는지 보여줄 수 있었습니다. 향후 투자를 받는다면 추진력을 더 높일 수 있겠죠. 세 번째 단계는 성장을 계획하는 것입니다. 예상한 바대로 애니는 앞선 조사를 통해 팀을 확장할 수 있는 승인을 받았습니다. 이때가 바로 규모를 키울 수 있는 적절한 때였습니다. 애니는 경험이 많고 관련 지식 전문가인 상담원을 바탕으로 채용 프로필을 작성했습니다. 그리고 공식적인 채용 절차와 상담원 교육 시스템을 수립했습니다. 고객과 소통하는 모든 직원에게 필요한 기술과 정보를 제공하기 위해서였습니다. 두 번째 목표는 상담원 경험 및 효율성 향상입니다. 이를 위한 첫 번째 단계는 모든 것을 한 곳으로 통합하는 것입니다. 다른 고객 서비스 팀장과 이야기하던 중 애니는 통합 인터페이스라는 단어를 계속 듣게 되었습니다. 상담원이 고객의 전체 이력과 기타 관련 정보를 한눈에 볼 수 있는 곳이었습니다. 애니는 팀원들에게도 알려주자고 생각했습니다. 에크미는 온라인 리테일 기업이기 때문에 전체 시스템을 바꾸지 않고도 주문 정보에 접근할 수 있도록 셔피파이 연동을 추가하여 쉽고 간단하게 상담원 플랫폼의 속도와 효율성을 높였습니다. 두 번째 단계는 내부 지식 기반, 즉 날리지 베이스 활용입니다. 이는 업무 속도를 높일 수 있는 또 다른 방법입니다. 즉 상담원이 필요한 정보를 찾고 질문을 원활하게 해결할 수 있도록 지원하는 시스템입니다. 방법은 다양하겠지만 애니는 간단한 FAQ로 시작하는 것이 좋겠다고 생각했습니다. 상담원에게 동기를 부여하기 위해서였죠. 세 번째 단계는 빠른 티켓 라우팅입니다. CX 초기에 다른 기업들과 마찬가지로 에크미도 상담원이 직접 티켓을 라우팅하거나 라운드 로빈 방식으로 라우팅했습니다. 하지만 더 좋은 방법이 있습니다. 특정 입력 폼을 통해 고객 문의를 받고 이를 자동화하여 가장 적합한 상담원이 해당 문의 티켓을 맞는 방법입니다. 상담원과 고객 모두에게 더 나은 방법이죠. 이제 마지막 계획입니다. 마지막 목표는 고객 경험 강화입니다. 첫 번째 단계는 신규 채널을 오픈하는 것입니다. 이메일과 전화는 에크미가 주로 고객과 소통하는 방식이었습니다. 하지만 애니는 시대가 변했다는 걸 깨달았고 고객이 찾아오는 대신 팀이 고객을 만나러 가기를 바랬습니다. 하지만 선택의 폭이 너무 넓었습니다. 고객 설문조사를 실시할 수도 있었지만 애니는 2021년 젠데스크가 발간한 고객 경험 트렌드 보고서를 알게 되었습니다. 고객들이 소셜 메시징을 많이 사용하고 있다는 트렌드를 확인하고 애니는 페이스북 메신저를 첫 번째 채널로 선택했고 좋은 성과를 냈습니다. 고객이 채팅으로 소리를 쳐도 귀가 아플 일이 전혀 없으며 훨씬 더 효율적입니다. 어떤 상담원은 동시에 2~3배 더 많은 고객과 소통하기도 합니다. 두 번째 단계는 셀프 서비스를 시작하는 것입니다. 또 다른 트렌드는 고객이 상담원에게 연락하기 전에 스스로 문제를 해결하려고 한다는 것입니다. 그래서 애니는 셀프 서비스 헬프 센터를 오픈했습니다. 팀은 이를 더 확장할 계획이며 우선 현재는 반복적으로 답했던 질문들을 제공하고 있습니다. 헬프 센터는 24시간 연중 무휴로 운영됩니다. 에크미 고객은 셀프 서비스 옵션을 통해 스스로 해결하는 성취감을 느낍니다. 그리고 회사 입장에서는 상담원 인력 문제를 해결하기 때문에 한 번에 2마리 토끼를 잡는 셈이죠. 마지막 단계는 고객의 피드백을 빠르게 반영하는 것입니다. 애니는 고객이 단순히 구매에서만 끝나는 것이 아니라 기업에 있어 중요한 피드백을 제공한다는 사실을 파악했습니다. 고객의 조언을 공유하고 실천할 수 있는 시스템을 만들면 에크미는 전반적으로 크게 개선될 수 있습니다. 애니는 고객 지원 시간 확대, 기술 개선, 보다 편리한 연락 방법 등에 대한 고객 피드백이 있다는 것을 알게 되었습니다. 나중에 애니는 C셋 설문조사를 자동화하거나 더 좋은 분석을 위해 서베이 몽키 또는 퀄트릭스를 연동할 수도 있습니다. 애니의 CX 전략 덕분에 에크미는 CX 여정에 산을 오를 수 있게 되었습니다. 처음 1.5개에서 이제는 4개의 베스트 프랙티스를 구현했고 계속 발전하고 있습니다. 이제 CX 라이저가 되었고 앞으로 CX 챔피언의 가능성도 분명히 보입니다.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the CX Starters Breakout in today's CX Discoveries webinar. My name is Elena Franklin, and I lead the customer success team for Zendesk here in Asia. Now that you're on your journey from CX Starter to CX Champion, Zendesk wants to help. In a moment, you'll see a demo of the Zendesk Suite from one of my colleagues, Jeremy Corman, Senior Product Marketing Manager. He's going to take us through a short demo of the Zendesk Suite from both the customer and the agent perspective, as well as share a standard view that a customer service manager might see for monitoring KPIs and reporting. Getting started has never been easier, and utilizing all the functionality within the Zendesk Suite is the fastest way to accomplish some of those key best practices that we just talked about. Things like giving agents the right tools to service your customers quickly in their channel of choice, being able to measure and report the right KPIs, and by providing a convenient feedback loop for customers so you can use customer insights to benchmark and continually improve your customer service over time. If you do have questions throughout the session, feel free to just pop those down in the chat window there. We have Zendesk experts on standby ready to answer your questions. And if by chance we don't get to answer your question during the session, we will follow up with you afterwards. Now, Jeremy, over to you.
So, hey everyone, my name is Jeremy. I'm on the product marketing team here at Zendesk. And also as a former agent, someone who used to answer phone calls and emails using all these disconnected systems, it's just an absolute joy to be able to share with you guys a demo of our amazing product here. So I want to take you through a quick whirlwind demo. We're going to go start to finish showing Zendesk off from the end user experience, the agent side, and the admin side. And I want to show you how Zendesk enables businesses to deliver conversational customer experience over so many channels. So let's jump into it. So what we see here is the help center for a business called The Eatery. And The Eatery is an online food delivery business. And just like Shauna was saying a minute ago with the help center, what we want to do here is have content that is catered to all the different people that we serve. And with the eatery, the business is quite complex because we serve diners, couriers, and restaurants. So it's really easy for me to say, hey, I'm a diner. Let me dive into this and find some information that's relevant to me. I can see some information on health and safety, read a popular article here about allergens, and even see a little note right here about some things that the eatery is doing related to COVID. The other thing is we make it easy to find all the channels in one place when you come to the help center like this. So I can see a phone number at the top of the page if I want to call in and talk to someone. I can submit a ticket if I want to start a conversation and follow up over email, or I can even click on WhatsApp and I'll load up my WhatsApp conversation right here and start messaging over the eatery phone number right here. But if I go back to the help center, everything we just looked at right here is also beautifully rendered on this mobile device. So all the same information right here on my iPhone. But what I want to draw your attention to is this nice little red messaging button in the bottom corner. So when I click on this, I'm going to start a messaging conversation over the Zendesk native messaging channel. And I'm going to be greeted here by AnswerBot. So AnswerBot is an amazing AI-powered tool for handling it's really good for handling low complexity questions. So if I have a question like, do you have a promo code? And I click on that, AnswerBot knows that I want a little 10% discount, gives me that promo code, and I can respond and say, yes, that solved my problem. So that's great, but let's think about what happens if we have a slightly more complex issue. So if I go back to my website here, let's say we just ordered some food and unfortunately the delivery is running late. So let's start a conversation again over messaging and see what that looks like. So we got a couple quick reply buttons here and one of them says my order is late. So I'm going to click on that. And AnswerBot knows that this is a more complex issue. This is something where I want to talk to an agent. So before doing that, AnswerBot's going to ask me some questions, collect a little bit of information, and then make a nice warm handoff. So in this instance, I'm playing Asha Patel, got her email address right here. And when I send this information in, AnswerBot's going to collect all this and look for the next available agent. So with that, I'm going to take off my end user hat and put on my agent hat, and we're going to jump over here to the agent workspace. So I got this accept message button over here where I can accept this conversation that just came in from Asha. So first of all, I just want to point out how nice it is to see the exact transcript of what happened between Asha and AnswerBot. I can read that whole conversation, see the information that was collected, and I have all that context to jump into this conversation. But sometimes that's not even enough. Sometimes you need more information, and that's what we have over on the right side of the screen. So I can see all the information about Asha, her contact information, and then I can also jump into some apps where we're pulling in even more information from some of our backend systems. So I can see that Asha made an order from the Vine Roadhouse. I can also go down here to another app and see some more things about Asha's, more information about kind of her lifetime history with our business. So I can see she's been a member since 2015, spent a good amount of cash with us, which is great. And I can even jump into a shopping cart and see some information about what's happening with some of her other orders with some of our other brands. But in this case, what I want to focus on is helping Asha with this late order. So unfortunately, we're a food delivery business. We run into this a lot. So we've made a macro when we run into this type of issue so we can handle it more quickly. So a macro down here is just a pre-written or pre-canned response that helps us with a common issue. So I'm going to click on contact a restaurant about a late order to kick off this macro. Now you'll see this actually did two things. First of all, it started this little message down here where I can say, hey, Asha, I'm sorry, give me a minute. I'm going to reach out to the restaurant. So I'm going to go ahead and send that over. The second thing this macro did is start a Slack conversation. So right up here, I can reach out to the Vine Roadhouse over Slack and say, hey, I need a little help. Can you look into what's happening here? We got a late order. So I can also just send that right here. Now, this is all amazing because I didn't have to switch tools at all. I didn't have to jump to a different tab. I didn't have to open a new window. I was able to respond to this conversation, pull in all the information I need, and do all of it without leaving the agent workspace. So that's all good and fun, but I'm going to take off my agent hat now, and I want to show you a few things from the administrator side. So we started by looking at this help center, which is great, and we have all these amazing articles, but what is it like to maintain this help center? What's it like to keep this all up to date? So if I jump to the back end of our help center, that's what I'm looking at here, and I can see all the articles that I have published. Now, we saw at the beginning this little article on allergens. This is a really popular question we get. People want to make sure they're not eating anything that they're allergic to. And I have all the settings on the right side of the screen here where I can choose who is this article visible to, who's able to control and edit the article. But what I really want to draw your attention to is this little box right here. So this is what I pointed out earlier. At the Eater, we've gotten a lot of questions over the past year about our COVID policies. So we've added this little blurb to almost all of our articles saying that we're doing a no-touch delivery and some good things like that. Now, it's such a pain when I have to update this and it's on so many different articles. I don't want to go one by one to make this update. So I know we're actually extending this policy from June to July. And since I have this set up as what we call a content block, it's super easy for me to make this update. So I'm going to change this from June to July. And then I can see that there's actually 10 other articles where this same content block is living. So with one click of a button, I can make this update and apply that change to all of my articles. And this makes maintaining your content so much easier. So for the last part of this, no admin day would be complete without taking a quick look at analytics. So for that, we have Explore, where we have all these amazing out-of-the-box dashboards. This one's one of my favorites. It's our tickets dashboard, and it shows you what's happening in terms of your ticket volumes. So I can see right here what's happening, what times of day are most busy for me, what days of the week do we get the most traffic, and I can also see some interesting things like what channel is most popular. So we've been getting a lot of questions in over messaging. Now, this is all great, but this information is not useful if you're not looking at it. So one feature that I really love is the ability to schedule a delivery. So I set this up so I'm getting a delivery of this dashboard every Monday at 8 a.m. to kick off my week so I can see exactly what's happening. So that's pretty much it. We jumped through the end user experience, taking a quick peek at the Help Center. We looked at the admin side of things and answering a question from the agent workspace. And then lastly, we jumped to the back end of our Help Center and a quick peek at analytics.
Thank you, Jeremy, for showcasing the power of using the Zendesk Suite from both customer and agent perspectives. Jeremy also showed us the powerful analytics built into Zendesk and how you can measure those key KPIs that we talked about at the start of the session. Things like first response time, agent efficiency, and monitoring the number of queries coming in across channels through our omni-channel dashboard. If you need help from the Zendesk team to optimize your Zendesk Suite and setup, we have an amazing professional services team that can help you ensure you're utilizing all the functionality and all the power of Suite. In the resources section, you'll see a contact us form. Just submit that and we will ensure someone gets back to you. Finally, thank you so much for joining us today for the CX Discoveries webinar and this CX Starters session. Hopefully you've gained some valuable insights into the next steps you can take as you embark on your journey towards becoming a CX champion. And now, Sarah Reed, over to you to help us wrap up today.
CX 이머저 라이저 여러분, 이제 CX 챔피언에 한 걸음 더 가까워졌습니다. 이제 CX 라이저 단계인 에크미는 고객 경험을 위한 7가지 베스트 프랙티스 중 4-5가지를 실행하고 있습니다. 하지만 에크미는 전 세계 고객에게 더 좋은 서비스를 제공하는 CX 챔피언이 되기 위해 7가지를 모두 실행할 수 있기를 희망합니다. CX 챔피언의 경우 최초 응답 시간을 단축하여 고객 문제를 더 빨리 해결할 수 있고 상담원 생산성도 끌어올립니다. 고객 서비스 팀의 미해결 티켓 수도 훨씬 적죠. 그러나 에크미의 최초 응답 시간은 이에 미치지 못하는 2시간 30분입니다. 평균 티켓 처리 시간은 거의 6시간이며 평균 상담원은 월 49건의 티켓만 처리합니다. 거의 4%의 티켓이 미처리 상태로 남죠. 팀원들은 과도한 업무량에 힘들어하고 이런 상황에 불만족한 고객들은 고객 서비스가 더 좋은 회사로 떠나갑니다. 이 문제를 개선하기 위해 어디서부터 시작해야 할지 애니는 고민이 많았습니다. 추가 인원과 기술 예산을 확보하긴 했지만 어떻게 해야 CX 챔피언이 될 수 있을지 고민이었습니다. 애니는 팀원들과 함께 숫자를 계산하고 여러 시나리오를 구상한 후 방법을 찾았습니다. 첫 번째 목표는 비즈니스 성과 개선입니다. 이를 위한 첫 번째 단계는 속도를 개선하는 것입니다. 애니는 응답 처리 시간 단축이 필요함을 느꼈습니다. 빠르게 돌아가는 세상에서 고객들은 점점 더 빠른 속도를 원하기 때문이죠. 문제를 신속하게 해결하면 고객 호감도가 향상되고 신뢰도도 쌓입니다. 그래서 에크미는 고객이 직접 답변을 찾을 수 있는 헬프센터를 오픈했습니다. 여기에 인공지능을 활용하면 고객이 원하는 답을 정확히 찾는 데 도움이 됩니다. 동시에 상담원 업무를 자동화하고 워크플로우를 맞춤할 수 있기 때문에 고객은 기다릴 필요가 없습니다. 접수되는 고객 문의 트렌드를 파악하고 신속하게 해결하면 팀의 처리 시간은 줄고 고객 만족도는 증가합니다. 두 번째 단계는 프로세스를 발전시키는 것입니다. CX 스타터 다음 단계인 라이저로 이동하는 많은 기업들은 처음부터 완벽함을 추구하기보다는 시작이 우선이라고 생각합니다. 하지만 애니는 라이저에서 챔피언이 되기 위해서는 완벽함이 필수라는 것을 파악하게 되었습니다. 여러분의 품질 보증, 즉 QA 프로세스는 어떠신가요? 젠데스크의 마에스트로 QA와 같은 다양한 파트너 솔루션을 이용하면 고객과의 대화를 쉽게 검토할 수 있습니다. 또 다른 프로세스도 고려해야 합니다. 상담원의 커리어 개발 목표를 세우고 방안을 구체화하여 상담원의 능력을 최고로 유지할 수 있도록 해야 합니다. 세 번째 단계는 지표 확장입니다. 애니의 팀은 고객 만족, 고객 유지, NPS라는 세 가지 KPI를 추적했습니다. 하지만 이에 그치지 않고 비즈니스 성과에 중요한 모든 것을 측정해 새로운 KPI를 적용하고 데이터를 준비해야 합니다. 애니는 비즈니스 운영 방식을 측정하기 위해 직원 NPS와 상담원 만족도 두 가지 내부 지표를 추가했습니다. 이 지표를 통해 내부적으로 어떤 문제가 있는지 파악이 가능했습니다. 두 번째 목표는 상담원 업무 효율성을 향상하는 것입니다. 이 목표를 위한 첫 번째 단계는 워크플로우 라우팅 개선입니다. 애니는 에크미의 워크플로우 라우팅을 더 잘 활용하도록 만들었습니다. 고객에게 기술적인 문제가 있거나 고객이 해외에 거주하고 있거나 고객이 VIP인 경우 등에 대한 규정을 설정하는 것입니다. 개방형 API를 통해 데이터 기반 라우팅을 탐색하면 팀이 비즈니스 인텔리전스를 파악하는 데 도움이 될 수 있습니다. 트레이.io 같은 미들웨어 솔루션을 사용해 백엔드 시스템을 연결하면 상담원 워크스페이스와 더욱 스마트하고 효율적으로 연결할 수 있습니다. 고객의 질문을 가장 적합한 상담원에게 배정할 수 있는 기술 기반 라우팅을 사용할 수도 있으며 아주 간단합니다. 두 번째 단계는 보고 체계 개선입니다. 상담원을 위한 또 다른 방법은 티켓 보고를 위한 프로세스입니다. 일반 상담원에서 선임 상담원이나 특정 부서로 문의 이관 시 사용할 수 있는 효율적인 시스템 구축이 필요합니다. 더 많은 시간과 높은 권한이 필요한 요청을 구분할 수 있다면 고객의 고충을 줄일 수 있습니다. 또한 상담원은 복잡한 고객 문의를 처리할 때 느낄 수 있는 어려움을 최소화할 수 있습니다. 세 번째 단계는 스크립팅 통합입니다. 상담원은 통합 난리지 베이스에 대한 접근이 필요합니다. 그리고 까다로운 문제를 응대할 때 활용할 수 있는 스크립트도 필요합니다. 추가로 애니는 젠데스크에서 상담원이 각 채널별로 응대 멘트를 준비할 수 있도록 다양한 방법들을 찾았습니다. 프롬프트를 활용하여 다양한 채널에서의 소통을 맞춤화하여 처리할 수 있도록 했습니다. 세 번째 목표는 고객 경험 강화입니다. 첫 번째 단계는 간단한 질문 자동화입니다. 고객 문의는 복잡도에 따라 다르게 응대해야 합니다. 복잡한 고객 문의에 대한 처리 프로세스뿐만 아니라 간단한 문의도 고려해야 하죠. 간단히 처리할 수 있는 문제라면 고객이 기다려야 할 필요가 없기 때문입니다. 젠데스크의 조사에 따르면 고객의 63%가 편리하게 소통할 수 있는 챗봇을 선호한다고 밝혔습니다. 애니는 에이다와 솔비 같은 챗봇을 최초 응대 도구로 사용하고 챗봇 대화로 문제 해결이 어려운 경우 상담원과 연결되도록 했습니다. 두 번째 단계는 고객을 세분화하는 것입니다. 고객의 유형은 매우 다양합니다. 기업이 고객을 더 잘 이해하기 위해서는 고객의 특성에 따라 세분화하여 분류할 필요가 있습니다. 나이, 위치와 같은 인구 통계나 구매 습관 등의 행동을 기준으로 삼을 수 있습니다. 이러한 세분화 전략을 통해 개개인에 맞춰 소통할 수 있고 고객들은 이런 맞춤형 대화를 특히 선호하기 때문에 매우 중요한 전략입니다. 마지막 단계는 소통을 목표로 하는 것입니다. 고객은 항상 특별하게 대우받기를 원하기 때문에 고객 지원 시 발생할 수 있는 다양한 상황에 대처하기 위해 세심한 계획이 필요합니다. 상담원에게는 세분화된 고객 정보와 적절한 응대 멘트를 제공하고 고객에 대한 전체적인 정보를 제공하는 데이터 시스템도 활용해야 합니다. 이를 통해 상담원은 고객과 공감하며 소통할 수 있고 이것이 바로 진정한 고객 경험의 차이를 만드는 방법입니다. 애니의 전략 덕분에 에크미는 CX 여정에서 더 높이 오를 수 있게 되었습니다. 4-5개의 베스트 프랙티스에서 이제 6개를 구현했고 계속 발전하고 있습니다. 이제 CX 라이저가 되었으니 CX 챔피언 고지가 눈앞으로 다가왔습니다. 이제 챔피언으로 한 단계 더 올라갈 수 있는 젠데스크 메시징 활용 방법에 대해 데모를 통해 알아보도록 하겠습니다.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the breakout for CX Risers in today's CX Discoveries webinar. My name is Sophie Devlin, and I'm the Customer Success Leader here in APAC for Zendesk. Well, you've already come a long way on your journey from CX Starter to CX Riser, and CX Champion should already be in sight. In order for you to get there, you need to hone in on these best practices that we've been talking about. Chances are you've already been experimenting with new channels, giving customers the option to talk with you when and where they want to. Our research shows that customers love messaging. So we've built in some short demos here shortly to show you how messaging can take you and your customer service to the next level. The first example is my personal favorite, as this showcases smart self-service with messaging and automation built in. We are also fortunate to have our customer in Asia, Coda Payments, showcase for us how they provide a great customer experience for their customers using Zendesk Messaging. For those of you who may not know Coda Payments, they help digital content providers monetize their products and services through their multi-channel payment gateway. You may have heard of some of their leading games like Moonton, Mobile Legends Bang Bang, Garena, Free Fire, and Tencent, PUBG Mobile. Streaming platforms like BeIN and Bigo Live, and also apps like Tinder and video on-demand platforms like View have all integrated with Coda Payments. So let's see Coda Payments' Zendesk Messaging solution in action.
In this demo, you will see the end-user experience where we'll cover how easy Zendesk Messaging makes it to have great conversations with rich interactive experiences and built-in automation for faster support. And of course, all of this is available right out of the box for business. We are here at Coda Payments' website. Coda Payments helps digital content providers monetize their products and services. It values providing great conversational experiences to give their customers flexibility and convenience, fast and personalized service. It is equally easy for Coda Payments to add Zendesk Messaging to their website. It's right out of the box, and with a few clicks, they were able to make messaging available on their website. So their customers always get the help that they need when they need it at their own convenience. Coda Payments customers can easily engage a conversation with their customer service through the web widget and get help through automation that is built into their messaging experience by using Zendesk AnswerBot and Flow Builder. With automation, Coda Payments is able to provide customers faster support. In fact, instant answers that are available 24/7 reflects to a higher CSAT, or what we call customer satisfaction. A customer can be quickly greeted by AnswerBot and is given a few options of how they can be helped. This also decreases the average cost per customer contact by deflecting common questions with automation. When a customer is in need of an urgent technical support, the customer can reach out to a human agent. Before an agent steps in, the AnswerBot quickly collects some information from the customer and then passes on the context of the error to our human agent. This way, the customer service agent can pinpoint exactly what the customer's issue is quickly without needing to even type a response. It's fast, it's efficient, and provides the customer with a personalized experience. Customers can get their issues resolved and may even tell their friends about how Coda Payments customer service is super convenient. Now, let's jump right into the admin side of things and see how Coda Payments builds that automation using AnswerBot and Flow Builder. We're now in the Flow Builder admin, and let me show you how you can build a flow. A flow is basically a visual representation of a conversation between the AnswerBot and your customers. Of course, like any conversation, you're going to start with a greeting, and that's usually the first step. You can customize this greeting to be whatever you want. You can make it represent your brand and say hello in a way that represents your company. The next step is going to be a series of options. This is where you take your flow and you branch it out almost like a decision tree. Whatever options you put here are going to show up as quick reply buttons to your customers. One thing that's really nice about the Flow Builder is that at any point you can click on the top right button here where it says Preview, and you can see exactly what it's going to look like to your end users. Let's go through the exact same flow that our customer went through earlier in the demo. We select one of the quick option, Becoming a Reseller, and that's going to give the customer a response to submit his inquiry through a web form. When we get to this part, and when we ask for a human support, this is where AnswerBot is configured to help with an agent escalation or a transfer step. AnswerBot is going to ask questions like, what's your name, what's your company name, the product issue or type of issue you're asking, or the email address. And all of this information is going to be collected and then mapped to a ticket field that can be viewed by your agents, so they will have the context they need when they jump right into troubleshooting. So now we have shown you Flow Builder, and it's pretty great, and you can do a lot of amazing things. But if you want to go beyond the out-of-the-box experience, you can also do that using Sunshine Conversations. What this means is that you can extend your conversational capabilities even further. Things like third-party bots, automations, or any API integrations. You're able to pull in and do a data dip to any of your third-party systems. You can also set up proactive messages or use some of our advanced message types. For now, our customer has had a quick and pleasant customer support experience with Zendesk Messaging that delivers rich, modern, and automated out-of-the-box conversational experience and enables you to build stronger and more personalized relationships with your customers.
Now I'd love to quickly touch on another example, and this time with Instagram. I know I've been using messaging to connect with brands as soon as I was able to. It's the convenience of using a channel that I already use day to day. It meant that this was a natural progression to start using messaging with brands as well. I loved how fast it was and the conversational nature. It made it feel just like chat, but I loved that I didn't have to wait around for the agent to respond to me. I could go about my day and check back when I was ready or when I got a notification. With messaging, agents will never lose the conversation history, and both the agent and the customer can continue where they left off, be it web, mobile app, or social. I'm going to assume that a lot of you guys have an Instagram account, and at one point you scroll through the feeds, find something that you would like to buy, and wish that someone could help you with that without leaving your experience. I know if I'm needing to get my questions answered, my default is to direct message the company. And I always hope to do that within the same interface that I'm already interacting with the company. I much prefer that than needing to go away, search on the website to find another way of contacting. And sometimes I'll find that I will go directly to Instagram to DM a business, even if I didn't originate there. The good news is that Zendesk has rolled out Instagram Direct into the public since June this year. What this means is that businesses are no longer limited to using Facebook's Business Manager to respond to customers on Instagram. You can now do it in Zendesk. So now let's watch a quick video demo and see this in action.
Over the past couple of years, businesses and their customers are now doing research, discussions, and most commonly, shopping into the social media platform, like Facebook or Instagram. Facebook has opened their APIs to enterprise businesses so that they can integrate with their existing tools and data. What this means for customer service teams is that they can manage conversations at scale with personalized service without leaving the app, and ultimately offer a better customer experience. For businesses like The Lux, they use Zendesk's messaging solutions with its Instagram account. They're able to generate an automated ticket and add it to the customer service queue when a shopper posts a comment or Instagram story or sends a direct message. The Lux's customer service team is then able to more easily review, respond, or triage the request with up-to-date information, promotions, or support guidance. Now it's just your another typical day. You jump into your favorite social media app, Instagram, and scroll on your feeds, and you see something you like. You visit the Lux Instagram profile because you're interested in one of the items they're selling online. Instead of looking up the Lux's Contact Us page on the web for your question, you can easily DM them in Instagram. You can then provide some context of your question with texts, images, emojis, or attachment, letting the customer service agent know which product you're interested in. Instantly, you get an acknowledgement response that someone from the customer service team will get in touch shortly. Customer service agents at the Lux has a unified agent workspace readily available to solve any issues of their customers quickly and efficiently, powered by Zendesk. Let's take a look at how an agent would work on this particular conversation. If a customer is interested in a certain product and is asking for some guidance about the item, agents can send product cards that contain information and direct them to a Facebook store or the Lux's online store for purchase. Agent can also use tools like promo code generator so they can reward customers with their loyalty without leaving Zendesk. Seamless and convenient. When customers switch into the Facebook platform, Zendesk supports private messaging and public comments as well, turning these messages into tickets in Zendesk automatically. In fact, companies with the best customer experience invest in offering various channels. 89% of CX-focused organizations are more likely to embrace messaging apps, while 87% on social media. For now, you have the information you need when you need it without leaving Instagram, giving you a great shopping experience. But wait, you suddenly remember your previous order last week and wanted to check the order status while you have the agent online. As for the agents, easy peasy. They can check order status right at the comfort of their agent workspace. With a few clicks here and a few clicks there, agents are able to provide you with your order details. Customer service at its finest.
Messaging has transformed the way we communicate with our friends and family, as well as businesses. When a business gets messaging right, it can create the kinds of easy, personal, and convenient experiences that build that long-lasting and loyal customer relationship and really take your CX to the next level. I wanted to thank you for joining us today for our CX Discoveries webinar. In the CX Rises session, hopefully you've gained some valuable insights into the next steps that you can embark on as you continue on your journey to becoming a champion. Now back to you, Sarah Reed, to help us wrap up for today.
CX 챔피언 여러분, 드디어 CX 여정의 마지막인 챔피언이 되었습니다. 하지만 아직 갈 길이 남아 있습니다. CX 챔피언은 고객 만족을 위한 7가지 베스트 프랙티스를 모두 실행하고 있습니다. 다른 보통의 고객 지원팀이 고객 문제를 처리하는 데 약 3시간 30분이 걸리는 반면 CX 챔피언은 최초 응대 시간이 2시간 미만입니다. 상담원은 월 62건의 티켓을 처리하는데 이는 CX 스타터의 2배입니다. 미처리 티켓도 4%밖에 되지 않습니다. CX 챔피언은 상담원 인력도 잘 유지하여 요즘같이 불확실한 시기에도 잘 대응할 수 있습니다. 하지만 CX 챔피언의 위치만으로는 경쟁에서 살아남을 수 없습니다. 다른 기업들도 챔피언이 되어가기 때문이죠. 실제로 전 세계적으로 CX 챔피언의 수는 50%나 증가했습니다. 가만히 있다가는 경쟁력을 잃게 되고 고객들도 고객 서비스가 더 좋은 회사로 이동할 것입니다. 어떻게 하면 챔피언 위치를 유지하면서 발전해 나갈 수 있을지 고민이 필요한 때입니다. 이를 위한 첫 번째 목표는 비즈니스 성과 개선입니다. 첫 번째 단계는 애널리틱스를 통합하는 것입니다. 애니는 CX 챔피언으로 가는 여정에서 에크미의 비즈니스 목표와 관련해 의미 있는 지표를 측정하기 위해 KPI를 설정했습니다. 따라서 모든 고객 접점에서 애널리틱스와 실행 가능한 비즈니스 인텔리전스를 통합하기로 했습니다. 젠데스크는 지표, 채널, 시간에 대한 분석 결과를 보여주는 쉽고도 강력한 솔루션을 통해 CX 운영을 디테일하게 파악하고 조정할 수 있는 정보를 제공합니다. 두 번째 단계는 업셀링 활용입니다. 업셀링과 크로스셀링은 수익 증대를 위한 기술이지만 구매 단계에서 모든 고객에게 동일한 제품을 추천하면 그닥 효과적이지 않습니다. 고객이 본인을 위한 맞춤형 패키지를 추천받는다고 느낄 때 업셀링과 크로스셀링이 가능하고 고객 만족도 또한 높일 수 있습니다. 업셀링을 위해 애니는 상담원에게 행동 데이터, 셔피파이 구매 이력, 엠퍼리티를 활용한 상황별 정보를 제공하여 놀라운 성과를 얻었습니다. 세 번째 단계는 워크플로 관리를 개선하는 것입니다. 애니는 팀 성장과 함께 직원 이탈률과 운영비를 줄이기 위한 핵심 전략을 배웠습니다. 애니는 고객 문의가 몰리는 피크 시간에 모든 채널을 집중적으로 관리할 수 있도록 전략적으로 고려했습니다. 동시에 데이터를 활용하여 업무량이 많은 시간대를 예측했습니다. 또한 1년 중 문의가 급증하는 시기와 마케팅 프로모션도 인력 관리에 영향을 미칠 수 있습니다. 예상치 못한 악천후, 언론 보도도 마찬가지이죠. 애니는 타임시프트와 플레이복스 같은 인력 관리 도구를 이용하여 이와 같은 예상치 못한 상황에 대응합니다. 두 번째 목표는 상담원 업무 효율성 향상입니다. 이를 위한 첫 번째 단계는 신규 상담원 교육입니다. 고객 서비스 상담원이 암호 재설정이나 주문 상태와 같은 간단한 질문에만 응답하던 시대는 지났습니다. 현재 상담원들은 복잡하고 민감한 요청도 모두 처리합니다. 애니는 상담원이 높은 공감 능력을 가질 수 있도록 교육에 힘썼습니다. 또한 상담원이 내부 난리지 베이스를 활용하고 수정 권한도 가짐으로써 최신 정보를 액세스하도록 지원했습니다. 덕분에 상담원들은 서로 인사이트를 공유할 수 있습니다. 두 번째 단계는 협업입니다. 애니는 고객 서비스에서 사일로를 없애는 것이 더 나은 CX를 제공하는 핵심이라는 사실을 알았습니다. 단순 고객 서비스 제공만으로는 충분하지 않으며 고객 서비스는 제품, 마케팅, 영업 등 회사의 모든 업무와 연결되어야 합니다. 이를 위해 슬랙과 마이크로소프트 팀즈와 같은 협업 도구를 연결하여 상담원이 상황을 파악하고 문제를 직접 해결할 수 있는 워크플로우를 만드는 것이 필요합니다. 세 번째 단계는 동기부여와 참여도를 높이는 것입니다. 애니는 상담원 복지 포인트 또는 업무 능력을 향상시킬 수 있는 기타 보상을 제공함으로써 동기부여와 참여도를 높입니다. 확실한 방법은 상담원이 목표와 함께 전체적으로 개선하고자 하는 특정 지표를 파악하는 것입니다. 영화 티켓이든 맛있는 점심이든 현실에서 확실한 보상이 필요하며 이는 고객 서비스를 제공하는 업무를 조금이라도 재미있게 만드는 것이 목표입니다. 마지막 목표는 고객 경험 강화입니다. 이를 위해서는 먼저 고객 지원 통합이 필요합니다. 고객이 매장 내에서 도움이 필요할 때 요청을 하기 위해 건물 밖으로 나가서 모퉁이를 돌아가야 한다면 매우 번거롭습니다. 놀랍게도 다수의 고객 서비스 포털이 이런 방식으로 운영되고 있습니다. 애니는 에크미 사이트에 직접 옵션을 포함하면 불편을 줄일 수 있다는 것을 깨달았습니다. 챗봇과 메시징이 완벽히 통합되어 고객은 손쉽게 문의할 수 있습니다. 두 번째 단계는 고객 여정 매핑입니다. 애니는 더 나은 서비스를 제공하기 위해 고객 입장에서 생각해야 한다는 것을 깨달았습니다. 고객은 어떻게 처음 브랜드를 접하고 최초 구매 동기는 무엇이며 또 언제 에크미의 단골 고객이 되는지에 대해 생각해 보았습니다. 고객 여정 맵은 이런 질문을 이해할 수 있는 강력한 도구입니다. 고객 세분화나 특정 업무를 중심으로 고객 여정을 그리게 되면 고객을 더 잘 파악하고 문제를 인식하여 보다 원활하게 소통할 수 있습니다. 가장 중요한 것은 고객 질문을 예상하는 데 도움이 된다는 점입니다. 마지막 단계는 선제적으로 행동하는 것입니다. 애니는 궁극적으로 고객 응대가 고객 문의에 한 발 앞서 미리 지원하는 선제적인 지원으로 발전하기를 원합니다. 문제가 발생하거나 커지기 전에 미리 대처하는 것이죠. 선제적인 지원은 비즈니스 성과를 극대화할 뿐만 아니라 고객 만족도를 높입니다. 인공지능이 고객 라이프 사이클에서 전반적으로 도움을 주기 때문에 자원을 많이 사용할 필요도 없습니다. 플레이비오 같은 도구를 사용하면 고객이 구매를 망설이고 있을 때 자동으로 메시지를 보낼 수 있습니다. 제품 배송이 지연될 때는 자동으로 이메일을 보낼 수 있어 배송 시에 아주 좋습니다. 이러한 모든 참여가 지속적인 고객 관계를 만들어 나가고 에크미 충성 고객을 확보할 수 있게 합니다. 애니의 전략 덕분에 에크미는 이제 CX 챔피언이 되었습니다. 이제부터는 뛰어난 고객 경험을 바탕으로 고객 서비스를 뛰어넘어 모든 영역으로 확장하게 될 것입니다. 그리고 팀원들의 삶을 훨씬 더 즐겁게 만들면서 비즈니스 성장을 함께 이뤄나갈 것입니다. 그럼 마지막으로 머신러닝과 AI를 활용해 고객과 상담원의 경험을 향상시킬 수 있는 방법에 대해 데모를 통해 알아보도록 하겠습니다.
Congratulations again for being a CX champion. You've reached the pinnacle, but as you know, a champion's work is never done. it's likely you're already using AI and machine learning to improve the agent and customer experience. So we're here to help you take it to the next level. I'm Majgaard from Zendesk, and I'm here with Ash Fontana, the author of The AI First Company. Now that sounds a lot like a CX champion. Ash, when companies first hear about artificial intelligence and are thinking about leveraging it in their business, it can seem like a huge and gargantuan task, especially for leaders at businesses that don't really have that technical background that helps them sort through all the noise that's out there. How can people from across an organization bring AI to their company's strategy and help improve the customer experience?
It's a great question because it certainly is intimidating. This sort of general sentiment around AI is still such that people get the potential but still find it intimidating. And I think step one is just having the right words, having the vocabulary to talk about AI so that you can then put AI first in all of the conversations that happen every day. Conversations about product, about pricing, about policy, about people, who to hire, etc. And what I've tried to do with this book, The AI First Company, and I think what I hope people get out of this interview that we do today is just a couple of different ways to talk about the actual practical advantage AI gives you. And if you're able to do that, you've passed step one. You've got people interested, you've got people engaged with bringing AI into your organization. And what's an example of like some of that vocabulary I don't think people have today that's really useful to have? Data learning effects. So this is the actual advantage AI gives you, which is that it enables you to learn more quickly than you can learn in your own head. It enables you to learn over all the incoming data you've got from so many sources, different tickets, different product data, every usage data, all sorts of stuff, and figure out, okay, what are customers really using, or where are they really struggling with the product? And, it's one thing to have a product manager do that, but it's another thing to have a natural language processing system do that. The second thing that I think is really helpful to people is having a process for experimenting with AI. I offer a process in a book called Lean AI, and that is a way for people to get access to just one data set at a time, not all the data in the organization, to have access to models that they can, build themselves, whether they're simple statistical models or regressions that they can just plug data into and just try to run a few different experiments with a few different parameters with a nice interface, and a way to present the output of that experiment. And the third is, having a way to distribute data science and AI talent throughout the organization such that, they're centralized enough so you know where to go if you need help with data science and AI, and they have good tools and they can get started on problems with you right away, but decentralized enough so they sort of have an understanding of what each part of your business is trying to do.
I really like that idea of decentralizing AI talent and making sure that it's something that you're engaging everybody in the organization around. The other thing I really like is this notion of experimentation. So often, we get assigned goals and we strive really, really hard to meet those goals as a company and as leadership at a company, and failing them can sometimes be a bit of a blemish on a career. But when you look at artificial intelligence and a lot of these new and unproven methods that are being brought to businesses, you need to have that culture of experimentation and need to accept that iterative failing and improving nature of it. And it makes me think a lot about expectations. One of the things that particularly for CX leaders is that when they think about AI and how it's going to impact their business, they imagine something like a robot that's doing work on the factory floor, right? That's fulfilling work that a human could actually do. And in CX, that often means within a contact center. The thing is, as consumers, we've all probably visited a website or chatted with some kind of chatbot, and we know that the brand that's brought in the technology is missing the mark, and it just doesn't work, doesn't feel natural. So for companies that are starting to evaluate AI, how do you think they should set their expectations? And how do they actually take the first step on this lean AI journey and being careful again not to step into the world of science fiction, but set goals that are really achievable and realistic.
Yeah, I think it's still very much the case that so much AI is not artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, and that is the whole reason we call it artificial is that it's not like us. And so it's doing something we can't do, which means it's doing something slightly better, more reliably, or taking a different perspective on things, is in like analyzing things more quickly. It's just doing something a little bit differently to the way we do things. And so the expectation should be, it'll do something you can't do, but it won't do anything you can do. I guess, to put it really simply. And in the context of, a CX champion, as in understanding what customers want and getting it to them, there's no way AI today, let's just talk about what's available today, is going to replace anyone in a way. It's just going to let you sift through a lot more tickets. It's going to let you search better, just a better search bar when you're searching for a term in tickets or whatever else you're doing. It's going to let you maybe label tickets more quickly. I think all tickets with this phrase in it should be labeled like this, and then I want to see how many of them are and when they came in. That's something that used to take like quite a long time. And, AI can help you do that really quickly now. So it's going to let you do something you can't do, but it's not understanding really long paragraphs of feedback from customers. It's not understanding, well, if someone clicks this, then does this, then churns at this point, this is why, this is how you get them back. It has no semblance of what the customer's objective or rationale is in that case of trying to figure out a customer journey. And it's not going to compose a paragraph that makes any sense, really. It'll make sense, but it won't really be totally right or address a question. It's not doing any of that. We're getting close. Some of the bits are there, the bits of the pipeline. We do have, especially in the last 2 years, better models for understanding whole paragraphs, not just sentences. And we do have tools that can, let you feed a sentence into them and then label all the sentences like that with a certain hashtag or category. So we do have some good tools, but they're just pieces of the puzzle. They're just little analytical tools, really, that together can be really powerful. And so I think that's where people should set their expectations, which is making different things, different parts of your whole job as a CX champion better, faster, cheaper. Even translation, right? It's making that part of it a lot easier. So it's making bits easier, but it's not solving the problem or doing the job.
I think that's a really interesting takeaway for anybody who's going out there and thinking about AI projects within their business, to really scope them down and simplify them down to very nicely encapsulated augmentation projects where you're thinking about how can you improve this clunky part of the process or this very labor-intensive thing that your team is spending time on, and start there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's just, I think about giving people the power to figure out the little things that could be a little bit quicker, could be a little bit cheaper to do, giving people the power to figure out, well, if we had this insight, if we actually knew how many times someone said something like this in a ticket, on a call, in a text message that they're sending us through a chat system, giving people the power to sort of run those experiments. If we knew this, what could we do, is really important. And that's how you get the power out of AI. You don't get the power out of AI by, for example, saying, let's just pick this whole division and try to automate them out of a job. Often that results in a lot of cost, a lot of frustrated research agendas, and a lot of data cleaning that ends up nowhere. So that's not it. It's about enabling people to, automate and improve little things that are part of their jobs every day, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely a hopeful and I think a great way to start thinking about bringing AI to the enterprise. And it actually makes me think of something else. A lot of the people that are listening to this right now, they might not go in the trenches and actually build and develop AI approaches that are bespoke to their problems. Oftentimes, they'll have vendors knocking at the door that are going to perhaps in many cases, show them very, very compelling demonstrations of their technology. And depending on the vendor and the type of technology they're selling, some of the demos can be quite impressive. But at least in my experience, and perhaps you've seen this as well, many of these demos tend to fall short when they're brought, when they see new data, new results from the real world, and can't work with them as closely as they did on the training data. So for someone who's in the position to purchase this technology from a vendor and are trying to really evaluate it, how can they see past the really exciting demo results and really dig in to understand the lasting impact of the investment that they're going to make?
Yeah, you've just nailed the very first step, which is get it running on your data as quickly as possible, because your data could be very different to the data they use to build the predictive model, to train it, so to speak. So getting that running really quickly is really important. Now, you've got to be fair here. You've got to make it easy for the vendor to ingest your data, provide it to them in a usable way. You've got to give them a subset, don't just give them a massive lake of data, so to speak, and let them figure out what to run and how to get it, reformat it. And you've got to set a realistic schedule and have some realistic expectations. But also you've got to push them at this point. Once they do run the model over your data, well, if it's not perfect, if it's not super accurate out of the box, how quickly do they respond to that, and how do they respond to that? Do they develop a new little predictive feature, so to speak, for you, or do they quickly train it over a subset of your data and then run it again and get a better result? Or do they do something else? Do they even just explain well why it's different when run on your data compared to run on all your other customers' data? So you've got to be fair, but it's also worth testing them. So I think that's one thing to do to sort of get to the bottom of it. Now, that's just getting to the bottom of does it work initially. Making it work, as in making the whole implementation work, making the POC sort of work in terms of prove what it's meant to prove out, prove the concept, and implementing it well. There are a lot of different steps there that, again, I outline in the book, and there's no need to sort of orally go through a very long checklist here, but there are checklists, there are guides, there are all these things in the book to sort of go through this. So, for example, how do you make a proof of concept work? How do you make sure it's got the right audience? How do you make sure you're understanding the results of the experiments they're doing? How do you make sure the executives that are ultimately going to sign off on the purchase of this product understand what this model is really doing? And how do you explain outputs? And how do you set up tracking so that people are even using this during the sort of the trial phase? So there are lots of things to do in terms of ensuring a POC goes, in terms of figuring out, to your original question, does it work or will it likely work on our own data? Then doing a POC to figure out, okay, does it work on our own data? And then implementing it, which is making it work on your own data every single day, day in, day out.
Ash, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation and hope we can do this again soon. And thanks to everybody out there who's watching along and wants to learn more about how to bring AI to their business.
Thank you very much, Mike. This is a really exciting place to apply AI, and so I'm glad we got to speak about it.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you learned a ton about CX maturity and feel ready to venture out on your own journey. Because with what you've heard today, you can deliver amazing customer service. To learn more from our experts, please stick around for some Q&A. And as always, stay safe, be helpful, and we'll chat again soon.